Welcome back to Coffeesodes, the podcast where we do deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. Can you believe this is already our 32nd episode?
Wow.
I'm Josh,
I'm Kelly.
and we're ready to unpack some intriguing research for you today.
That's right.
Don't forget to check out the episode description for more background on today's topic, but here's the short version. We're taking a look at Snapchat filters and how they can influence perceptions of attractiveness. Buckle up, because this research, a 2024 study from the journal Social Networking titled Differential Effect of Gender and Snapchat Filter Types on Attraction Perception, has some surprising findings. For example, did you know that women are generally perceived as more attractive on Snapchat regardless of the filter?
Right.
And get this, certain filters can actually boost attractiveness for men.
It's true. It really makes you think about how these seemingly simple additions to our photos can have such a powerful impact on how we're perceived.
Okay, so before we dive into the juicy details, let's set the stage. Snapchat's huge, right? Especially among younger demographics. It's evolved so much from just sharing photos to incorporating videos, text, even advertising.
Exactly. And those filters are a big part of what makes Snapchat so engaging. It's not just about capturing a moment anymore. It's about enhancing it, playing with it, and maybe even, as we'll see, strategically presenting yourself.
So this study wanted to understand how using different filters impacts how we perceive each other. Specifically, how those filters affect our perceptions of social and physical attractiveness.
Right. And to do that, they involved 226 college students and showed them mock-up Snapchat photos. These photos featured both male and female college students, each using a different filter. They had everything from no filter to a pretty filter, a frown filter, a dog filter, and even a sponsored filter.
So not just asking people's opinions, they actually set up a controlled experiment to see how people reacted. Clever. What kind of sponsored filter did they use?
This study was done back in 2024, and they used a filter promoting the Trolls movie. After viewing these mock-ups, the participants rated the attractiveness of the person in each photo, allowing the researchers to compare how different filters influence perceptions.
Okay, so what did they find? Did any of the filters make people instantly irresistible?
Well, the most striking finding was that female Snapchat users were rated significantly more attractive overall, both socially and physically, compared to male users. And this held true regardless of the filter being used.
Hold on, so even without a filter, women were seen as more attractive.
Yes.
That's really making me think, is this a reflection of those broader societal beauty standards we always hear about? Or is there something specific to the Snapchat environment itself that plays a role? Like maybe the way women tend to use the platform.
It's a fascinating question, and one the study doesn't directly answer, but it definitely raises a lot of interesting points about gender and social media.
It did influence perceptions of social attractiveness.
Yes.
Okay, now we're talking. So which filters were the social superstars?
You might be surprised to hear this, but the frown filter and the sponsored filter actually increased social attractiveness ratings. And this was especially true for men.
Wait a minute, the frown filter? The one that makes you look all grumpy? Why on earth would that make someone seem more attractive? That seems completely counterintuitive. I would have guessed something like the pretty filter would have been the winner.
Right. It does seem a bit counterintuitive, but when you think about it in the context of Snapchat's overall vibe, it starts to make sense.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does frowning make someone more appealing?
Well, prior research has shown that Snapchat is often associated with authenticity and close personal connections. It's less about presenting a polished, perfect image and more about sharing those real, sometimes goofy moments with friends.
So maybe by using a filter that intentionally distorts their appearance, they're signaling that they're not taking themselves too seriously, like they're comfortable enough to be silly.
Exactly. It could be interpreted as a sign of vulnerability and trust in the viewer, which can actually be quite endearing. It's like saying, hey, I'm comfortable enough with you to show you my less than perfect side.
Interesting. I can see how that might make someone seem more relatable and approachable. Okay, so what about the sponsored filter? What's the appeal there, especially for men?
Well, one possible explanation is that using the most up-to-date sponsored filter suggests the user is active and engaged on Snapchat. It's like they're in the know away of what's trending. This can make them appear more socially connected and appealing, particularly in the fast-paced world of social media where trends come and go so quickly.
I can see that. Like they're plugged into the social scene and know what's cool. It's like having your finger on the pulse of what's hot right now. Makes sense, especially given that this study was done back in 2024 when the Trolls movie was probably a big deal. But doesn't that make you wonder if the social boost from a sponsored filter is kind of fleeting? Like, wouldn't it lose its appeal once the promotion is over?
That's a great point. The social currency of a sponsored filter could be very time sensitive.
We've covered the frown filter and the sponsored filter. What about the dog filter? You mentioned it earlier. Anything interesting about that one?
Yes, the dog filter consistently received high social attractiveness ratings, but specifically for female users.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, remember, we're talking about 2024. The dog filter was hugely popular back then, often shared across different social media platforms. So perhaps using it signaled a sense of playfulness, trend awareness, and being in tune with what's popular online.
Right, so it's not just about liking dogs. It's about being part of a larger social trend. I could definitely see how that would make someone seem more socially appealing in the context of that particular time period. It's like they're saying, I'm in the loop, I get it, I'm one of you.
Exactly.
Wow, this is fascinating stuff.
It is, and there's even more to uncover. But let's dive into those details in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
So far, we've talked about how those perceptions of attractiveness can be influenced by gender filter type and even the social trends of the time. But there's another layer to this that really gets to the heart of how we perceive ourselves and others.
Ooh, another layer. I love it when things get even deeper.
This study didn't just ask participants to rate the attractiveness of people in those mock-up photos. They also asked participants to rate their own attractiveness.
Hold on, so they were judging other people and themselves. That's interesting. I'm guessing that wasn't just a random addition to the study. What were the researchers trying to uncover with that?
You're right. It wasn't random at all. They were looking for connections between how people see themselves and how they see others. And what they found is really fascinating. There was a significant correlation between a participant's own perceived attractiveness and their perception of the attractiveness of the person in the Snapchat photo.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually mean?
It means that the more attractive participants rated themselves, the higher they tended to rate the attractiveness of the person in the photo, regardless of gender or the filter being used.
Whoa. So you're saying that if I think I'm attractive, I'm more likely to find other people attractive too. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it? It speaks to this idea of projection. We tend to project our own feelings of self-worth and attractiveness onto others. So we're feeling good about ourselves, we're more likely to see beauty in others. And conversely, if we're feeling less confident, we might be more critical of others' appearance. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you think about how much of what we consider beautiful is actually objective and how much is shaped by our own internal filters, so to speak. Like, are we really seeing people as they are, or are we just seeing reflections of our own self-image?
Exactly. And that's a question that goes way beyond Snapchat filters. It raises questions about how social media in general is shaping our perceptions of beauty and ourselves.
It's almost like those filters in our minds can be even more powerful than those digital filters we apply to our photos.
That's a great way to put it. And it's something to be mindful of. As we scroll through our feeds and see all those perfectly filtered images, it's easy to start comparing ourselves and feeling inadequate. But we have to remember that what we're seeing is often a carefully curated version of reality.
Totally agree. It's so important to remember that those perfect images we see online don't always reflect real life.
Right. And this study, even though it focuses on Snapchat, highlights something really important about the digital age in general. We're constantly bombarded with images, often heavily filtered and edited, and it's bound to have an impact on how we see ourselves and others.
It makes you wonder if this constant exposure to filtered images is setting unrealistic beauty standards and impacting our own self-esteem.
It's definitely a possibility. And it highlights the importance of being mindful of how social media is influencing our perceptions. But there's one more piece of this study we need to explore before we wrap things up.
Ooh. All right, we've talked about gender filter types, self-perception, and the impact of social trends. What else did this study reveal about how we perceive attractiveness on Snapchat?
Well, the study also looked at the perceived popularity of a filter and how that influenced perceptions of attractiveness.
So they're saying that if a filter is considered trendy or popular, it can actually make someone seem more attractive. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes. Participants were asked to rate how popular they thought each filter was, and guess what? The filters that were seen as more popular also tended to boost attractiveness ratings, especially for the female Snapchat users.
That's wild. I never would have thought that the perceived popularity of a filter could have such an impact. Why do you think that is?
It might have to do with social conformity and our desire to fit in. We're naturally drawn to things that are popular. It makes us feel like we're part of the in crowd. And this extends to the digital world as well.
So using a popular Snapchat filter is kind of like wearing the right clothes or listening to the right music.
Yeah.
It's a way of signaling that we're in the know and part of the trend-setting group.
That's a great way to put it. And it makes you wonder how these filter trends even start in the first place. Is it celebrities, influencers, some sort of viral phenomenon? There's a whole psychology behind it that would be fascinating to unpack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to those filter trends from now on. I'm curious to see how they emerge and spread.
Me too. This entire study has been so thought-provoking. It really highlights how these seemingly simple filters can actually reveal a lot about social dynamics and how we perceive each other.
Right. Who knew that something as simple as choosing a Snapchat filter could be such a complex social act? We've learned that it's not just about aesthetics. It's about self-perception, social trends, and even our desire to fit in.
And it really underscores how social media in general is shaping our ideas about beauty and social status.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining me today.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, the next time you're on Snapchat, think about the filters you choose. What are they saying about you? And how are they influencing how others perceive you? It's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on Coffeesodes, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.